Well, rather than good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Here we are, here we be. And hopefully this is the last bill. In fact, it is the last bill, which we'll be dealing with in this first half of the biennium. But before we get into that, there are several papers there on your tabletop that we ought to be looking at. The first one I like to look at is this sheet right here. Okay, why I'm handing this out, I think it's a good opportunity for those that have never gone through putting a budget together or through the committee of conference process, that you know a little bit how this works. I am provided as chair of the committee from the clerk's office the bills which have been modified that we sent to them to the Senate, and they come back to us for us to either look at, to concur, or non-concur and saying we just can't agree with that, it's dead, or to non-concur and request a committee of conference. We have received one bill back at this point in time, and that's the bill which you have here right in front of you. It's HB 771. And this was the open enrollment bill. And what, as you recall, the open enrollment bill specifically relative to funding for open enrollment schools, and it had a process for responsibilities of the sending school, receiving school district, and the big change was in section 3, where it said each school district shall establish a line item in the operating budget on an annual basis reflecting estimated expenditures for open enrollment school tuition. When we sent it to the Senate, they modified it, as you can see right there on the back side of the sheet that you're using to wave back and forth here. Okay, so on line 12, on the amendment made by the Senate, where it's on line 12, where the first word is tuition, they've added everything after it, and offsetting revenue estimates from the sending school districts. That's what they've changed. And they're now sent that back to us, and they're asking us to concur or non-concur. And I present it right here. Usually we have to get a little get together in the general court on a session day, look at it, and then decide to do one or the other. The committee chair can make that decision. However, I've always gone to the committee and taken where the majority of folks are. So my recommendation right now, seeing that the change is, I think it really benefits the bill, I can't see a reason why we want to, non-concur or non-concur and request a committee of conference. So briefly, is there any discussion? Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I agree with you that this is a concur. I think the two changes they made just make it more clearer, make the what's going on is a little more clearer. The first one, I think we intended the sending school district, we just didn't say so. And on the second one, it's just, we said that you put in a line that shows your expenses, but obviously a district that's receiving people will get income, right? So this just says list both, right? If you're receiving, you list the income, and if you're ascending, you list the expenses, or maybe in some cases you're ascending and in some cases you're receiving, and so that that's just saying give us a little more detail. So, anyways, concur is fine.
Any other? Yes, Representative Luno.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I would request that maybe we hold off on coming to whatever position we want to come to on this as a committee until after we've had some opportunity to get together as a caucus, as I think we will probably do on Senate Bill 99. But I would say at a minimum, looking at the bill as passed by the Senate, that it still has major structural problems given the fact that the tuition will be based on 80% of the sending district's cost, district's average cost per pupil is determined by the Department of Education. And I think, obviously the open enrollment receiving district could have a very, very different cost structure to it than the sending district. And you could sort of imagine, I think, a sending district from a property poor community, given the way we fund schools, being nearby a school district that has high value property per pupil, and with basically having those taxpayers having to subsidize the public education for people outside of their district based on their local, not their state property tax, but their local property tax. And given the fact that we've got such disparity among local property tax rates, I think this would be really something that's inequitable across the board. So I'd hope that before we move forward with a committee position, that we have an opportunity to talk amongst ourselves on this.
The way we've always worked this in the past is that, I've met and we've gathered in the chamber and we've looked around. And I know that one of these parties here at the table to my left voted against this bill. And to my right voted for the bill. And if we have a committee conference, you put the people on the committee conference that voted for the bill. So it's going to probably come out the same way, Representative Luno. And I think I'll just take a show of hands here right now. Do we concur or we non-concur, or do we non-concur and request committee conference? And
So-
I suggested that we concur.
I have a comment just on the technicality of this proposed change.
Which change? We haven't changed anything here.
Well, a comment on what they're proposing here.
This is what's been approved by the Senate.
I understand that, but I'd like to speak to what it says.
You go ahead and speak to it and do it briefly, please, because I don't want to spend a lot of time
So
on this
this is
today.
just from the perspective of somebody who's composed a school budget that really doesn't make a lot of sense, because the first part of it is a line reporting estimating what the district expects to expend on the students that go to another school. That's how it works, correct? And then the part about the revenue is a totally different. That belongs in the revenue estimate, which is not part of the budget, the budget is what you tend to expend. So this would be some kind of new accounting reporting to put them in the same place. I understand that for discussion purposes, it would make sense if somehow you thought you were going to send one student out and one student was going to come in, but that's not how you put together a budget.
Okay, how many people here would support concur? Just put your hands up. And how many people non-concur?
Non-concur.
Okay, so I'm going to concur. That's where the majority is. And that we will take that recommendation to the House floor. All righty.
We'll be speaking against that on the House floor.
Sure. Okay, so today we have SB 99 on the docket here. And I'd like to request a caucus here so that we have not had a chance to meet as of this point, so we're going to take a caucus through to about 1:30 here. That's another 15 minutes or so, and then come back and we'll start working on it. Go ahead and continue now with our session here on SB 99, and we are going to go into executive session, and I'm going to hand the gavel over to Representative Spilsbury.
Okay, I'm going to open executive session on SB 99 and recognize Representative Ladd for a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion of OTP.
OTP, do we have a second? Second by Representative Kofalt. And Representative Ladd, would you like to speak to your motion and make an amendment?
Yes, very briefly. I'd like to propose amendment 1920H.
Okay, we have a motion for amendment 1920H. Second. Representative Popovich Miller is second. Go ahead, Representative Ladd.
Yes, what the amendment does, the amendment modifies the bill very slightly and says it's the responsibility of the sending district to pay the amount of money which is specified in the rest of the bill for the student to attend the comprehensive high school at the CTE Center in an academic subject that's above and beyond the CTE course or programming. And it's important that we put this type of legislation forward, that there are students that have held back. One, there's been some districts, I don't know how many maybe right now, that have capped due to tuition costs, transportation costs. And there's other causations for students not taking the CTE courses, and that's regarding a conflict that they may need a course taught in the sending district, the resident district, at the same time the course they'd like to be in, the CTE program, is being offered. And they're having to make that choice. And the choice is, I'm going to take the course I need for graduation. Missing out on that opportunity to head down a pathway that leads to career and a skill in the trades. So I think this is very important that we try to encourage as many kids going forward to the CTE Center that we can. We have a record of approximately 20% of the kids in the CTEs in this state come from sending schools. We need to up that ante. We need to up that significantly and get more kids being sent to the CTEs for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ladd. Representative Bricky.
So I just need to say that I can't support this amendment. As a school board chair, I believe that this will cause more students to not go to CTE. As it stands now, there are, and I know it's happened in my district, there are students who, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for recognizing me. I always do that. I get so excited.
That was implied.
So there are districts that already do this on a per pupil basis. The fact that my district would now have to make the budget that much more for students who are attending the CTE program, which we're already struggling to fund the CTE program for the number of students that we have that we would like to send, on top of the transportation costs, which, as you know, we don't get much reimbursement for. It's really going to put more of a strain on school district budgets, more of a strain on property taxpayers. So I can't support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Representative Popovich Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to understand. I was wondering, I understand the objection on the grounds that it may increase costs, and I get all that. But you also said that you think it will lead to fewer kids having access to CTE. I really don't understand that part. If you would be so kind and help me understand that, I would appreciate it.
If I have to increase my budget, and I can increase my budget, I mean, I already had $2 million cut from my budget this year. I can't increase my budget, so that would mean fewer students would be able to go. I can't, the money's just not there. I can't ask the taxpayers for more money,
But is that driven by the bill or by the budget?
both in this case.
I'm dubious of that, but okay. Representative Luno.
Question actually to the amendment sponsor. Does the bill with the amendment require districts to participate in CTE or only require them to participate in the non-CTE classes if they have students going to CTE?
That's my understanding. This is basically piggybacking for those who would be in a CTE program already and allows them to stay for the other courses.
But it doesn't, but a district such as Hopkinton that sends kids to CRTC in Concord would not have to, I mean, they could if they wanted because of the costs of this, decide not to participate in the CTE program.
Yes, I think that's absolutely clear. I also think it's possible that a sending district, if they saw a problem emerging, could realign their schedule. Perhaps there may be other ways of offsetting the increased take-up.
Okay.
I would just note for everybody's attention that this bill came to us from the Senate with a very balanced group of sponsors, primary sponsor, Democrat, 5 Democrats, 6 Republicans. So I think it indicates a strong bipartisan sense that something needs to be done, even if perhaps it could be refined at a later date. Yes, Representative Luno.
So thanks. And that said, and I don't think that falls on deaf ears on this side of the table. We recognize that, but we also recognize when it's a bad policy, it's a bad policy. And I don't think that the unintended consequences of this may have been, perhaps they were not considered by the Senate the same way they're being considered here.
Okay, do we have further comments on the amendment? That's what we should really focus on at this moment, and then we'll have debate if it's amended on the OTPA. Okay, so then on the amendment, I'm going to close debate and call for the vote. And this is on Amendment 1920H.
Chairman Spilsbury,
Yes?
Representative McGuire,
Yes.
Representative Irf,
Yes.
Representative Copal,
Yes.
Representative Colcom,
Yes.
Representative Popovich,
Yes.
Representative Brown, yes. Representative Mahegan,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Luno,
No.
Representative Ames,
No.
Representative Burton,
No.
Representative Bells,
No.
Representative Damon,
No.
Representative Bricky,
No.
Representative Chrétien,
No.
Representative Weinstein,
No.
Representative Ladd.
Yes.
So 10-8, amendment passes.
So vote being 10-8, Amendment 1920H is adopted. And Representative Ladd, would you like to make a new motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion on SB 99 OTPA as amended with the amendment that we just recently passed.
Second.
Seconded by Representative Popovich Miller. And do you have any further comment?
I believe that the intent of this bill is great. Now, whether we've got all the i's dotted or t's crossed, that's going to be seen. However, it, as Representative Spilsbury mentioned, it does have the support of 5 Democrats in the Senate and 6 Republicans in the Senate, and 2 Republicans in the House and 1 Democrat in the House. I believe that it's important that we do everything we can to try and encourage more kids to participate in CTEs. In fact, the language which we have here dealing with this opportunity to participate in academic courses at the comprehensive high school is very similar to what's in rulemaking in the state of Vermont, where we have 5 CTE centers where New Hampshire students attend. So I think that this will encourage the RCTEAs to work this out and to, if there are areas which they see that need adjustment, I welcome their input. However, this does allow for students right now to participate in other academic courses at that receiving school. And secondly, this bill also provides the opportunity for those that are attending a charter school or non-public school to attend the CTE center that is closest to that charter school. The charter school is an open enrollment school. And the resident district of the student attending that charter school may be a good distance from the charter school, whereas there may be a CTE center much closer. So this does offer that student the opportunity to attend a CTE program that's much closer to where they're receiving their academic instruction. So yes, I think the intent of this bill is very, very good, and I look forward to its being passed.
Thank you. Representative Burton.
There was some discussion about the start date. Now, the bill's start date is still July 1st, 2025, this year. I think somebody suggested it should go to 26 because the school districts have already got their budgets together for 2025, 26. And I think it came from that side of the table that we should change the date of the bill. Effective date.
Is there further comment on the bill before I move? Yes. On this comment regarding the date.
Yes, I apologize because I
Representative
don't have my notes from our last meeting, but I believe my recollection is correct as far as the date, but the conversation went back to they have to prepare something by the 26th, not expend money by 2026, so that they are prepared for the next fiscal year. I'm sorry. No, January 1st, 2026, I believe, is when something needs to start being prepared, if I remember correctly, and then
I think
that would be
Representative
ready.
Holcomb is pointing to line 21 on page 1 of the bill as it came to us from the Senate. So the effective date of the bill is July 21, but I think the bill contemplates the year of implementation and preparation. Fair enough?
It's not actually the time that money is being expended, but
Right. That's a valuable clarification. Did that answer your concern, Representative Burton?
I don't think so. Yeah, okay.
Yes, so
Line 21 of page 2. Representative Luno.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I've always felt that this bill has good intentions about it. And, when I served on the Hopkinen board for a dozen years, I could definitely see the challenges facing the CTE students in having that transportation time, that lack of time back in the homeschool, and lack of access to classes that they may want to take in their home school. But I think the bill, as amended, really has a number of flaws in terms of its implementation. First of all, I think the tuition calculation is not correct and is unfair. Second, I think the fact that it doesn't come with any funding from the state, because it's not reducing instructional costs back at the sending district at all. It's just incurring more costs associated with CTE students. And I think third, the unintended consequences coming out of a flawed implementation such as this are going to cause CTE sending schools to pull out of the program. And I hope that these things will be considered when the bill comes to the floor, or if the bill goes to the governor's office, that they will be consider these flaws and these unintended consequences. And if this bill does eventually make its way into law, that I hope this legislature will somehow see the wisdom of being responsive to any problems that this causes down the road.
Well, certainly, I think your last comment, everybody can rest assured we'll watch it and we will make adjustments if they turn out to be necessary. Representative Bricky and then Representative Fellows.
So I agree with Representative Luno. I totally stand behind CTE programs. I believe in them deeply. I Not every child needs to go to a 2 or a 4-year college. We need CTE programs. And the fact that the original bill was bipartisan is a wonderful thing. But the amendment is not bipartisan. And the amendment is what really and truly, I just can't support this. So, thank you.
Representative Fellows.
Yes, so I'm speaking here to the first section that has to do with, asking the CTE centers to align their calendar and their schedules so that it makes it easier for students to take the regular courses and the CTE courses. This has been a topic of discussion for decades. And logistically, it's not really feasible for a group to be able to do that unless it's just a receiving district that has just one other district that their kids come from. They could get that aligned, but it's not feasible because the transportation time to get between the different places is always going to be different. I think that to address this problem, which is definitely a real concern, and it should be, that it should be tackled in a different way. And what I would like to see is something like that, what's it called? The Advisory Council on Career and Technical Education. I think that they could take up this issue and start looking a little bit outside of the box. Because instead of trying to move the students from one place to another, I think there are options to use technology, to use remote learning, and maybe you can move the program from one place to another place instead of moving the students. You can't do it. Logistically, trying to get all the CTE centers to just move the students and have everything line up is not possible. I think that it just needs a different approach to address this problem.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Are there further?
Yeah.
No?
I don't.
Okay, Representative Ladd.
I'd just like to make one comment about the amendment. If you look at the bill as it was amended by the Senate on page 2, line 8 and line 13, the only thing this amendment does on line 8 where it says not less than 80% of that district's average, it changes that of the sending district's average. It's all it changes. And that's all the amendment changes down on line 13 also of the bill as it was sent to us by the Senate. It says of the sending district's average cost. It's a matter of clarification. The intent of the bill was to say sending district. When I worked with the Commissioner of Education, he was very supportive of that amendment and the clarification. And also as a reminder, we talk about the CTE Advisory Council. The senators on this bill and the representatives on this bill were in that advisory council. So it has been worked out with those folks, and they have obviously signed on as co-sponsors, or if not, the prime sponsor, which is on that council. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Ladd. Any further questions? I guess my final comment is that I think that we will learn from what the districts go through in working out their agreements, and we can react to that as it gets defined. So it's not a closed book, but it's a step forward. So if there are no further comments, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote on the OTPA motion, SB 99 as amended by 1920H.
Chairman Spilsbury,
Yes.
Representative McGuire,
Yes.
Representative Erb,
Yes.
Representative Kufal,
Yes.
Representative Colcom,
Yes.
Representative Popovich,
Yes.
Clerk Brown, yes. Representative Mahegan,
Yes.
Representative Peoples,
Yes.
Representative Luna?
No.
Representative Ames?
No.
Representative Burton?
No.
Representative Fellows?
No.
Representative Damon?
No.
Representative Bricky?
No.
Representative Chrétien?
No.
Representative Weinstein?
No.
And Representative Ladd?
Yes.
So 10-8, motion passes.
So 10-8, and Representative Ladd will write the majority report. And what will the minority motion be and who will write it?
I'll write the name.
And will that be an ITL or an OTP?
It'll be an ITO.
ITL. Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'm closing the exec session on SB 99.
I'd like to remind folks that the committee reports have to be handed in before we leave this room today. They're due,
Right now.
they were due at noon today. Secondly here, we have a number of bills which we have retained. And I'd like to set up subcommittees for those bills. So the first bill is adequacy. That's a result of HB 651, 772, 491, and 434. We're looking at the whole 9 yards in terms of funding an adequate education. So I've asked that Representative Spilsbury be the chair of that committee, and so he's one. If you would like to be on that, let me know right now so I can get this. For the Dems, I'd like you to work through Representative Luno, and for the Republicans, work through myself there, and then or through Representative Spilsbury, and we'll set that up. So also then let Representative Luno know if you want to be on that one or not. And then the same thing for Representative Spilsbury, if you like to be on adequacy. The other committee we have is school building aid. Go ahead.
Perhaps a good size for that subcommittee would be 4 and 3.
That'd be fine.
Does that sound good, Representative Luna? Okay.
Okay, school building aid. That is a bill which we held over HB 295 and 366. The issues at stake are the issues such as, are we going to stay with the current formula? Are we going to look at a new formula? How are we going to deal with renovations? How are we going to do a new construction? How are we going to dealing with lease of a school building aid? So there's a number of issues there. Is it a state or a local responsibility? Those all will be discussed. So I will chair that one. And if anybody would like to be on that, that will probably be a smaller committee, like a 3-2, something such as that. So if you would like to be on that committee, please, on the Democratic side, talk to Representative Luno, and you can get those names to me. And the same thing on this, Representative Peoples, you're saying you'd like to be on it, so I'll put you on it. Need another Republican, and if we have more people like to be on it, we can spread it out, make it a 4-3. I have no objections to that. And of course, when we have these subcommittee meetings, I have no objection either that other people that are maybe not listed as a member come in and participate if they want on any given day. We allow that on the special education subcommittee right now. The last one which we have, I'm not going to put this forward until I have an opportunity to work with the trustees of the university system. It deals with higher education, 443, 510, and 1112. This deals with the appointments to the commission members on the Higher Education Study Committee, composition of commission membership, purpose of the commission. We're dealing with due process rights, freedom of speech, and it just drifts into a number of issues that we're dealing with at the university system right now and the community college system. So if you'd like to be on that, also please let Representative Luno know or myself know, and we'll get somebody to chair that. I don't have a person in mind right now, but we really need to get working on that one as well. Okay, are there any? Yes, Representative Bricky.
I'm really sorry. Can you repeat the bills, the House bills for adequacy? I didn't write
Yes,
fast
okay, I'll
enough.
do it slowly here.
Thank you.
651, 772, 491, and 734.
Thank you.
And this is going to be a real, there's a lot of meat there to be discussing. And we have the other foundation formulas mixed in with that. We're also going to be, I've asked Representative Spilsbury to chair that. He's been on Ways and Means, and we're going to be looking at that side of the equation as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that 491 is the one that goes to the revenue sources as opposed to the spending allocation.
Mr. Chair, what sort of timeframe would you be looking at to hold these retained bill?
Once the chairs are appointed, and they have been for the building aid and for the one that Representative Spilsbury is chairing, the chair will set those dates. We can meet during June, but not in this particular building. For example, school building aid could occur over at Granite State College. There's room available over there. We've been told we can use those facilities. So we won't be meeting in this building here. And we're going to get into committee of conferences and all that. We don't want to do a whole lot of meeting during the month of July and August. That's supposed to be break time, unless something really is exception. And then before you do that, you're going to have to get permission from the speaker's office to do that. So
we're probably talking September.
September,
But I mean,
unless you want to have a get-together prior to that time.
right, which would
right
be
now.
in June, but
Yeah.
you're competing with
Committee of
committees of
conferences
conference
and space.
Yeah. Yep.
But remember, Granite State is available. All we have to do is just try to coordinate through Angela over there, Adams, and we can get probably space
So
available.
who are the other chairs for school building aid?
School building, it's myself,
It's you. All right.
and I have not set a chair up yet for the for the higher education.
Okay.
We already got special education rolling and gone. We met, what, 1, 2, 3, 4
On
times?
the school building aid bills, there was some discussion several months ago that we may be looking at putting some language in there to study, to evaluate building conditions. Is that something that would be in one of these two bills, are you thinking?
It quite possibly could be. In fact, we have tried to do that numerous times in the past.
Right.
We've had, we figured out we had, 33 million square feet of public school buildings in the state, and that would cost us somewhere between, I'm trying to remember, was it $15 per or square foot or something? So it came up to like 3.3 million.
3.3 million.
3.3 million,
Yeah.
10 cents.
Yeah.
It was from 10 up to
Yeah.
20 or something such that.
Right.
And so we worked with that 10 cents amount, the cheaper amount, which is probably very outdated. But that was $3.3 million.
This was back in
And that was to-
2021 or
Yeah,
something
and that
like
was to do a survey, not of all the schools, through a random sampling, because we couldn't, and having similar team makeup with maybe an architect, an engineer, a policy person, go out to each of the buildings and be looking at those buildings in terms of the same criteria and the same standards. We didn't want to have the survey done by calling up the school and saying, hey, Mr. Custodian, tell us what's behind that wall, and they don't probably have a hot clue. And so they probably don't want to tell you what's behind the wall. And so we've been there, and this is something we got to get a better handle on. What we're dealing with out there in the rural and urban areas. It's an important one. There's also the concept of not allocating up to $50 million each year, of which we've gone over that halfway point as far as paying off the tail, but we're still paying a huge hunk. In fact, there was nothing new renovation or construction money put in the budget this year, just money to pay off our debt, which was a huge amount going back, back to 2010 or so, it was like $540 million. And so what we need to do is another way of doing it by allocating X number of dollars based on square footage, the type of kids in the school, elementary, middle, high school, areas needed, and allocating X number of dollars out each year to a separate fund, and using the same criteria to access that through the department. As far as, we don't want them using the money for maintenance. We want to use it for renovation and construction. And we also have to look at lease. We have lease monies also we allocate each year for leasing these structures. Some school district states have separate accounts for renovation and new construction, separate accounts altogether. We really don't have a whole lot of money to put in that right now, so it's something we got to try to work towards. We didn't put any money in capital construction this year for CTEs as well. Well, yeah, we did. We put $1. Yes, Representative Burton.
Just to clarify, the higher ed study committee, what bills would that committee be looking at?
Okay, I'll read them slowly to you, so you can write them down. 443, 510, and 112. And there's a lot going on with that right now. I'm looking forward to getting the report back from the university trustees. They're meeting the last week of this month in June. In June. What month are we in right now? May. Next month. It's all coming quickly. To look at where they're going. They know that they have more buildings and more space than's needed to the tune of at least 20 to 25%. And how we deal with this and our revenues, and Mr. Revenue is down here to my right, he can tell you that even what the Senate is dreaming up as what the revenues will be is still short of what the governor is projecting. And so it's really, we're going through some hard straits here right now. So want to see what that group's going to come up with the university system in terms of where they are, in terms of their cost of operation, et cetera.
I might just add the town of Durham is very interested in where the students are going to, and that's one of my interests as well. We
Yeah,
try to
because
work
we're
together.
seeing that many of these smaller colleges, like the colleges with 4,000 kids in them, they're seeing the financial situation in the country, this throughout the country, is economically really hurting those small communities. And kids are choosing to go to, that's my phone. It sounds like the commissioner. We have a report that came out in the Wall Street Journal. I may have mentioned this to you earlier, just last week, where if you come out of the community college system, the chances of you being unemployed are around 2%. If you come out of the 4-year systems in this country now, the chances of being unemployed are 15%. So people are looking at, kids are looking at, wow, I want to be employed. And we see the community college system receiving students, but we're really hurting with our demographic throughout this country. 210,000 kids, K through 12, in the state back in 2010. Shallow of 160,000 right now. That's impacting.
Mr.
everybody.
Chairman,
Yeah.
in all due respect, you have to look at beyond when they just get out of college. College graduates from a 4-year school make twice as much money on average than students who don't have a degree. If you look at just who's coming out the door, yeah, maybe that's true. You go right into your job you had in CTE. Sometimes it takes a while, and you may not make as much money being a minister or being a counselor or being an educator or a teacher. But those careers go on, and I think it's a little misleading to look at that. I read that article too, but I found it to be misleading at best and politically motivated at worst.
I don't think it's politically motivated. I think it is real, though. And, you know, when a kid that graduates has to come home and live with mom and dad or grandma and gramp, that's difficult. And I agree with you. The lifetime earning is still going to increase if you come out with a 4-year degree. We know that. But the times are difficult. That's what we're trying to say. And that's why we're seeing with the higher education, all of higher education is going through this real hard time with they can't continue functioning at the administrative levels the way they function. How many vice presidents does Durham have? How many vice principals? How many presidents? How many deans? How many of this and that? When we went through the last economic hardship, that was going back about what, 15 years ago. We saw the next year after we had a real hard budget, we saw the cost of tuition at UNH jump by 19% the first year, and then 13% the year after that. That's what we're seeing right now. And with those high tuition costs, we are seeing students making that choice. They can't afford it. And that's what we got to deal with right now, the affordability and the transferability of all this. Yeah, Sally?
In terms of the higher ed subcommittee, so what you've just been talking about available space and, repurposing and doing things different, is that in one of these bills? Because, the due process and the speech, that really doesn't have anything to do with what you were just talking about.
That's right. Due process is a result of what we've had, that the bill was, you heard it, we heard it, we know what's going on. But while we're looking at that committee also has, we're putting the task too. We can put tasks to these groups to, just like we're doing with the
Special
this
ed.
special ed, we've gone beyond and we've looked at Henry Lipman and what we're doing with Medicaid and leaving, what, $6 million, $5 million on the table, not receiving that. We're receiving, what, 8.8, he said? So there are issues that are associated we need to be looking at. Representative Burton.
Durham is an anomaly. Much of the student housing are owned by private companies in Durham, and they are experiencing vacancies. They will be renting out to workforce. The Durham, like UNH required, I think, sophomores to live in dorms, so they could keep their dorms filled. But what it's having is a very positive effect on workforce housing. When the students moved into the private buildings in Durham, if you've been there, it looks much different. That was a big help because that opened up workforce housing in Newmarket, Dover, Portsmouth. And the same phenomenon is happening now. That $100 million center that's going to open up on west end of campus is going to be a huge 1,000 employees working with NOAA and other research organizations. There's going to be an incubator in there. Durham, by accident, got Ben Thompson's farm, as you know, after the Dartmouth law case kicked us out of Hanover and sent us to Durham. Well, that's not bad if you've seen stores and a few other places. So don't make too many assumptions based on what that Wall Street Journal said.
Representative Burton, I'm not doing that, but you can look, if you're talking about workforce housing, take a trip up to Plymouth and see where those people with the master's degrees are living. They're living at home 50 miles away. There is a housing shortage in this state, no question. That's why we have a committee on housing here in the legislature. And I spoke with the chancellor of the university system this morning regarding the housing down in Durham. So costs for some of this housing are above the level which the incoming student can afford. And so there's a lot of issues there, and that's a huge topic. That's probably one of the highest priorities we have in the House, is trying to deal with housing. Anything else, Representative Spilsbury?
Yeah, is it fair to say that in each subcommittee's domain, we've clustered several bills that relate loosely around a common topic? And obviously, the retained bills has to be a focal point for each subcommittee, but the subcommittees should not be confined to that. They should think conceptually about what's going on in their arena and perhaps prepare for bills that could be introduced for 2026.
That's our goal. Not seeing anybody else. I got to be in Keene in about an hour and 45 minutes, so thank you very much for coming. And have a good afternoon, what's left of it.
Okay.